A woman named Eileen wakes up in a strange room and experiences a flashback to a moment when she was on a beach with her daughter, Eve. She also remembers another moment where some armed men started shooting at her in an attempt to kill her. Interestingly, Eileen doesn't seem to remember what happened, and as she wonders where she is, she hears a voice announcing that the first phase of a test is about to commence. Eileen doesn't understand this, and she asks the voice where she is. Unfortunately, the voice happens to be automated, and it just tells her to move the pencil on the table. Eileen still looks confused, but the voice tells her to complete the task within the allotted time. Almost immediately, the room lights turn red, and the voice tells Eileen to begin. Eileen seems confused by this, and as she asks what she's supposed to begin, a timer suddenly appears in the room. Eileen still doesn't understand what's happening, but she eventually gets out of her chair and heads toward the table that has a pencil on it. Eileen appears to be really weak, and she's only able to move slowly toward the table. When she gets to it, Eileen knocks down the pencil and tells the voice that she has moved it.
I moved it. Task complete.
As the voice then announces that the task has been completed, the normal lights come back on. Eileen doesn't get this, but as she asks where she is, something inside her head gets triggered, and she passes out. Just as Eileen sees a sand castle in her dream, the voice wakes her up again, and she realizes that she's back in the chair again. However, this time, it turns out that she has now been chained to the seat, with her hands also tied up. Eileen freaks out because she doesn't know what's going on, but the voice suddenly tells her to move the pencil. As Eileen looks confused, the voice tells her to complete the task within the allotted time. After the room lights turn red, Eileen looks scared and asks what she's doing in the room, as she also asks what the voice wants from her.
What do you want from me?
She just gets an automated response to complete the task within the allotted time. Eileen doesn't seem to get this, and she mentions that she can't reach the table because she's chained to the chair. Suddenly, the timer comes on, and Eileen starts freaking out again. As she says that she wants to leave, the voice tells her that if the task isn't completed within the acceptable parameters, her daughter will die. Almost immediately, Eileen remembers that she has a daughter, and she gets sudden flashbacks of Eve at the beach. This leaves her worried, and she asks the voice why it has her daughter. She doesn't get any response from the voice, and this leaves her frustrated. She then decides to focus on the task by finding a way to uncuff herself and move the pencil. After she figures out that she can just take off her shoes and throw them at the pencil, she tries to do this. Just as time nearly runs out, Eileen moves the pencil with her shoe, and the voice mentions that the task has been completed. When the lights come back on, Eileen tries to ask about Eve, but she immediately passes out again. She then finds herself on the beach and sees Eve singing and playing with the sand. Eileen looks confused and asks Eve what she's doing, but her daughter tells her to be quiet and says that the sand is singing.
The sand is singing.
Eileen doesn't seem to understand this, but Eve eventually tells her mom to sing with her. Just as Eileen joins Eve in singing a nursery rhyme, she gets sleepy and lies down gently on the sand. Almost immediately, she wakes up and finds herself back inside the strange room. She also happens to be on the floor, but after she stands up, she looks around the room to see if there's a way out. Unfortunately, she doesn't find anything useful, and she realizes that her chair has been bolted to the ground. When she also moves toward the table, she sees a bowl containing a strange green soup. Even though she doesn't know what it is, Eileen quickly finishes it up because she's hungry. After this, she uses the metallic tray to take a look at herself. As she seems disappointed to see how terrible she looks, she heads back to sit in the chair. Almost immediately, she notices that there's something odd about her hair, and as she checks it, she realizes that there's a small cut in the middle of her head. Eileen looks scared and asks the voice what it has done to her. As she also cries and says that she wants to leave, she falls asleep and sees Eve on the beach again. Shortly after, the voice wakes her up and tells her to move the pencil on the table. Eileen says she won't do it, but the voice responds that if the task isn't completed within the acceptable parameters, Eve will die. Eileen doesn't want that to happen, and she tells the voice to leave her daughter out of it.
You leave her out of this.
because she's just a child. The voice just repeats its previous message, and Eileen says that she wants to speak to her daughter. The voice says it's not possible, but Eileen tells it to make it happen. She adds that if she doesn't speak to Eve, she won't do anything else for the voice. Almost immediately, the voice tells Eileen to stand by, and a few seconds later, she hears Eve's voice. Eileen looks shocked and realizes that Eve is really in danger. Eileen then asks if Eve is okay, but she just mentions that she's scared. As Eve adds that she wants to go home, the voice tells Eileen that her daughter will remain unharmed if she continues with her tasks. Eileen looks disappointed by this, but the voice tells her to move the pencil. Eileen says she'll do it, but as she tries to move toward the table, she realizes that there's now a transparent wall in front of her. Eileen looks shocked by this, and as the timer comes on, she starts trying to knock down the wall. Unfortunately, the wall happens to be impenetrable, and Eileen is also unable to move her chair from its position. As she looks confused, she starts running into the wall to try to bring it down. After a few attempts, Eileen falls to the ground and looks terrified because her daughter is in danger. She then asks the voice what it expects her to do because it's impossible to bring down the wall.
What am I supposed to do?
As she keeps banging on the wall, she asks the voice what it wants from her. Unfortunately, the timer just continues running, and as Eileen looks frustrated, she starts shouting at the pencil to move. Nothing seems to happen at first, but as she continues shouting at the top of her lungs, the pencil moves. Eileen looks shocked by this, but the voice announces that the task has been completed. When the lights come back on, Eileen keeps wondering how she moved the pencil, but before she can ask any questions, she gets knocked out again. Almost immediately, Eileen wakes up back on the beach with a cut on her forehead. As she looks confused, she hears Eve telling her to help with building a sandcastle. Eileen decides to do this, but while she's at it, she starts wondering why she continues coming to the same place in her dream. As she asks Eve what's really going on, her daughter mentions that they're just building a castle. Eileen realizes that Eve doesn't know what she's talking about, and she just continues helping with the castle. Almost immediately, Eileen hears someone calling her name, and as the person touches her, she wakes up in a strange room. Surprisingly, there now happens to be someone lying on the floor, and this leaves her confused. As the man eventually wakes up, he sees Eileen and asks where they are. Interestingly, the man, Roger, happens to know who Eileen is.
Eileen, it's me, it's Roger.
But she doesn't seem to recognize him. As he then tries to hold her, she bites his hand and tells him to get away from her. Roger looks shocked and tells her his name, but Eileen still can't remember anything. Suddenly, she notices that he's wearing a wedding ring, and as she also sees her own ring, she realizes that he's her husband. Eileen still doesn't remember him, and Roger asks if she has lost her mind. As he moves close to her, Eileen suddenly gets flashbacks of her time on the beach with Roger. This helps her regain her memory partially, and she tells him that she doesn't understand what's going on. As Roger tells her to calm down, Eileen asks how he got into the room. Roger seems confused by this, and he tells Eileen that he doesn't know how he got there. He also looks worried and starts wondering why he can't remember how he got into the room. As he asks why Eileen is in the chair, she mentions that she just keeps waking up and hearing a voice that tells her to do things. She adds that the voice has threatened to kill their daughter if she doesn't cooperate. Roger looks shocked when he hears this, and he asks Eileen about the voice and what it really said. Eileen then mentions that it told her to move the pencil on the table, or Eve will die. Roger doesn't understand this, and he wonders why Eve's life depends on moving a pencil. Eileen says she's telling the truth, and Roger asks how she knows that their captors have Eve. Eileen says she spoke to Eve and confirmed that their daughter is really with their captors.
I talked to Eve. They have our baby.
Suddenly, the voice comes on again and tells Eileen to break the pencil. Roger says he won't do anything until he knows what's going on, but the voice just mentions that the task has to be completed within the allotted time. As the lights in the room turn red, Roger shouts at the voice and says that he wants to speak to Eve. The voice doesn't respond to him, and as the timer starts running, Roger asks what's happening. Eileen says it's another test, but Roger still asks what they're supposed to do. Eileen Eileen remains silent as she tries to figure out what to do, but Roger continues asking questions about the task and the timer. Eileen then says that when the time runs out, their captors will kill Eve. Roger doesn't understand this, but Eileen tells him to help her with the task instead of asking unnecessary questions. Just then, Roger picks up the pencil, but the lights in the room turn blue, and the voice warns him that only the primary subject can complete the task. Roger complains about Eileen being chained to the chair, but the voice keeps telling him to put down the pencil. It also mentions that if the test is not completed within the acceptable parameters, Eve will die.
Only the primary subject can complete the task.
Roger says he won't take orders from the voice, but Eileen tells him to put the pencil back on the table. Roger eventually does this, and the lights turn red again. He then tries to lift the chair, but Eileen says it's bolted to the ground. Roger doesn't know what else to do, and he asks how Eileen has been completing the previous tasks. Eileen says she just always found a way, but Roger asks what she means. Eileen seems frustrated and tells him not to yell at her, but Roger says that she has to do something already. Eileen says she's trying and that Roger has to let her think. Roger says he's doing that, and Eileen wonders if the task involves using her mind to move the pencil. As Roger keeps yelling at Eileen and talking about how she can't even reach the table, she suddenly manages to break the pencil with her mind. Roger looks shocked by this, and as the lights come on, the voice announces that the task has been completed. Eileen also doesn't believe what she did, and as Roger asks about it, he notices that she's bleeding from her ear.
Oh my God, Eileen.
Eileen looks confused by this, but before she can say much, she passes out again. She then finds herself on the beach and hears Eve singing a nursery rhyme. Roger soon shows up on the beach, and he sits just behind Eve while staring at Eileen strangely. Suddenly, Eileen wakes up and sees Roger moving around the room. As she asks what he's doing, he says that he's looking for a way out. Eileen thinks he's wasting his time, but Roger mentions that there has to be a way into the room because someone clearly brought in the food tray for them while they were unconscious. Eileen thinks they just have to play along and do as they're told because Eve is still in danger. Roger doesn't think their captors will just hand Eve over to them, especially after seeing what Eileen just did with the pencil. Eileen says it was just a trick, but Roger mentions that it's called psychokinesis. He says it's a real thing and that the government is probably behind the experiment. Eileen says she doesn't believe that the government has wiped her memory, kidnapped their daughter, and is now experimenting on them.
A secret organization has wiped my memory.
However, Roger says that they're only experimenting on Eileen because she's the one with powers. Eileen doesn't believe this, but Roger says she could really have powers. He adds that it would explain a lot of things because he remembers one time a mirror mysteriously fell while they were arguing. Almost immediately, Eileen gets flashbacks of her arguments with Roger, and she asks him if they always fought each other. Roger confirms this, and Eileen just gets up from the chair to drink some water. While she's doing this, Roger says that something weird is going on, and Eileen agrees with him. As she then lies down on the floor, he asks what she remembers last before finding herself in the room. Even though Eileen remembers being on the beach, she says that she doesn't remember anything. As she seems really tired, Roger tells her to eat her food, but she says that she's not hungry. Despite this, he still brings her the food and says that she has to eat something. Eileen doesn't seem interested, and she uses her powers to knock the tray from his hand. She then says that she needs to sleep, and Roger looks shocked that his wife has powers. Almost immediately, Eileen appears on the beach again, and Eve asks why she looks tired. Eileen says she doesn't know, and Eve mentions that she keeps going away.
You keep going away.
Eileen says she wants to stay, but that a couple of things keep getting in her way. Eve then tells Eileen to sit up and build a sandcastle with her. As Eileen does this, Eve asks if her mom thinks her dad would also want to play with her. Eileen looks confused when she hears this, and as she checks to see if Roger is on the beach, she notices that Eve has disappeared. This leaves her terrified, and as she shouts Eve's name, she wakes up in the room, and Roger calms her down. As Eileen feels a sharp pain in her head. Roger offers to check it out for her, even though she initially tries to push him away. Roger checks her head and sees that there's something like a chip under the injured area. Before Eileen says anything, the voice comes on again and announces that the second phase of the test is about to commence. After this, the voice tells her to put the ball on the table inside the bucket beside it. Eileen seems pissed by this, and she asks how many more tests there are. The voice just tells her to complete the test within the allotted time, and the lights immediately turn red. Eileen still tells the voice to answer her question, but Roger convinces her to do as she's told. Eileen tries to see if she can get out of the chair, but Roger just tells her to use her powers to put the ball in the bucket. Eileen doesn't think she can do this, but Roger continues encouraging her.
Just try.
As she then struggles to complete the task, Roger suggests using her powers to remove the bolts at the bottom of the table so that he can move it closer to her. Eileen still doesn't think she's capable of doing this, but Roger encourages her again. Following this, Eileen manages to use her powers to remove the bolts, and Roger pushes the table toward her. Just before the time runs out, Eileen puts the ball into the bucket using her powers, and the voice announces that the task has been completed. After this, Roger says sorry to Eileen for how he acted when he first woke up. Eileen says it's not a problem, and she forgives him. He then suggests eating their food, and as he pretends to be a chef, Eileen says she remembers him doing something like that to make Eve laugh. Roger says it's good that she's remembering things, and he asks her what else she can remember. Eileen then talks about the beach.
We took Eve to the beach.
And Roger says that they took Eve there for her birthday. Eileen says she remembers him being there, but that everything after that is missing from her memory. Roger says the chip in her head is probably responsible for that. He also says it's good to see that most of the things she remembers are nice. As he serves her food, he adds that he would love for him, Eileen, and Eve to be together again when they're free. Shortly after, Eileen is given more tasks to complete, and Roger continues encouraging her. Even though Eileen gets better at using her powers, she feels frustrated about the situation. Much later, while she's trying to put together a gun for a task, Roger looks confused and wonders why their captors want her to assemble a weapon. As he starts to suspect that something is wrong, Eileen tells him to stop distracting her. She adds that what their captors want doesn't matter to her, because her goal is to get her daughter back. As Roger tries to tell her what to do according to the manual, Eileen gets pissed and tells him to stop controlling her.
That's not where...
God, you're such a control freak.
Roger says he was only trying to help, but as Eileen remembers when she caught him drinking on the beach, she indirectly calls him a freak. Roger doesn't like this, but Eileen doesn't seem to care. She also says she doesn't know what's worse between being stuck in the room or being there with him. Roger gets tired of her attitude, but before he can say much, Eileen asks if he needs a drink, just like he always does. Roger then blames her for his drinking problem, and Eileen sarcastically mentions that she knows it's her fault. Roger seems pissed and says that he thought her memory was already erased. As she insults him again, he angrily hits the table and tells her that he's tired of her attitude. Suddenly, Eileen assembles the gun, and the voice tells her to load it. Even though Roger tells her not to do it, Eileen loads the gun and points it at him. Roger apologizes for what he said, but Eileen says she's already used to hearing him say sorry repeatedly.
Magic words. Sorry, Eileen.
Almost immediately, she pulls the trigger but manages to stop the bullet before it gets to Roger. He looks relieved by this, and the voice mentions that the task has been completed. Eileen passes out after this, and she finds herself on the beach again. She then sees Eve, who tells her that she doesn't think they can finish building the sandcastle. Eileen says it's already looking great, but Eve mentions that her dad didn't help her, even though he said he would. Just then, Roger sits in front of the castle and destroys it, while joking that he's sometimes clumsy. After this, Eileen wakes up and Roger goes to meet her. He then asks if she's okay, but Eileen mentions that she's cold. Roger takes off his jacket and gives it to her, and this makes her feel more comfortable. As they then eat together, Eileen asks Roger if he thinks their captors will eventually let them go. Roger says he's sure they'll be released, and that they just have to keep fighting and focusing on what they want to do after they get out. Eileen then asks how they met, and Roger says he thought she was starting to remember things slowly.
How did we meet?
Eileen says it seems their captors are only allowing her to remember certain things at certain times. Roger then says that she was studying to be a teacher, and Eileen asks if they met in school. Roger says he was actually in a band, and Eileen finds this interesting. She says she can't remember him being part of a band, but Roger mentions that it's better if she doesn't remember it. He adds that he made many mistakes, and he's sorry for everything. Eileen says she also made mistakes, but Roger mentions that she wasn't always bad. Shortly after, Eileen says sorry to Roger, but he asks what it's for. Eileen says she doesn't know, and that she wishes she could remember why she's sorry. After this, she falls asleep and finds herself on the beach again. This time around, she doesn't see Eve, but after digging through the sand, she finds Roger's finger and Eve's sandal buried there. This leaves her confused, but as she falls down, someone starts pouring sand on her body. When Eileen wakes up, she sees Roger inside a box,
Try and stop the sand!
looking scared, and the voice tells her that her next test is to save him. Suddenly, the box starts getting filled with sand, and Roger begs Eileen to do whatever she can to save him. Eileen tries to do this, but as she struggles to concentrate, her powers fail to work. Unfortunately, Roger gets buried inside the box when the time runs out, and Eileen looks devastated by this. The voice then tells Eileen that she has failed to complete the test within the specified parameters. Eileen looks worried and asks about Eve, but the voice just repeats its last message. Eileen then sits back in the chair and tells the voice to give her another test because she doesn't want anything to happen to Eve. However, the same message gets repeated, and Eileen screams in frustration. Almost immediately, some soldiers enter the room and tell her to come with them, but Eileen just asks where Eve is. One of the soldiers tells her not to make things hard for herself.
Don't make this difficult.
But Eileen doesn't seem ready to surrender. She then stands up and uses her powers to kill the men. As she kills the last soldier, she takes off his helmet and looks shocked to see that it's Roger. Eileen doesn't seem to get this because she just saw him get buried alive in the box, but she just forgets about this and leaves the room. Some other soldiers try to attack her again, but she takes them down easily. She then enters the elevator and heads to another part of the building. There, she sees Roger again sitting next to 3 doors, which are meant for materials, supplies, and spares. As she gets close to him, Roger says that they're all like him. Eileen asks who is like him, and Roger points to the door for the spares. Eileen then opens it and sees someone who looks just like Roger inside. As she comes out of the room, Roger mentions that they're all like him. Eileen doesn't get this, but Roger continues saying it as he walks away and laughs strangely. Suddenly, some soldiers enter the room and start shooting at her. Eileen uses her powers to stop all the bullets and turn the men against each other. Before she kills them, she takes off their helmets and sees that they all look like Roger. This leaves her confused, but she still kills all of them. After this, she enters the elevator again and goes to another floor. When she gets there, the room goes dark, and Eileen starts calling Eve's name. Suddenly, a bright light appears in the room, and Eileen says she wants her daughter back. The voice then mentions that the 3rd phase of her test has been completed and that her test cycle has ended. Eileen looks shocked and asks if it means that she has saved Eve. The voice doesn't respond, but Eileen mentions that she wants to see her daughter. The voice says it's not possible because Eve is gone, but Eileen doesn't understand this. The voice then disables the chip in her head so that she can regain her memory. Almost immediately, Eileen remembers how she was playing around with Eve on the beach. After a while, she goes to tell Roger that they need to start preparing to leave, but he says he isn't ready. Eileen then realizes that he has been drinking again, and as they fight about this, she asks when he'll stop. Roger says he'll stop when he wakes up happy and doesn't feel depressed anymore. He adds that if Eileen just shows him 1 ounce of the affection she shows Eve, things would be much better. Eileen cannot believe this, and she asks if Roger is jealous of his child. As they keep arguing, Eve covers her ears because she doesn't like it when her parents fight. Roger eventually gets pissed and slaps Eileen, and this leaves her shocked. She then shouts at him and uses her powers to throw him away. Unfortunately, Eve gets affected by this, and she dies along with her father. Eileen looks shocked by this and sees both of them buried in the sand, and this leaves her devastated. In the present day, Eileen tells the voice that Eve can't be dead because she spoke to her earlier.
Do you like it, Mommy?
However, the voice says it wasn't real, and Eileen realizes that she killed Eve and Roger. As she then asks why the voice made her remember what she did, it mentions that memory block removal usually occurs before the reconditioning stage. Eileen doesn't get this, but the voice tells her to go to the reconditioning room. Eileen then asks if she'll remember what she did if she goes into the room. The voice says she won't, and Eileen suddenly sees herself on the beach again. This time, Eve asks if she's leaving, but Eileen just says sorry for what she did. As she returns to reality, she tells the voice that she can't leave her daughter. The voice tells Eileen that Eve is gone, but she mentions that her daughter will be waiting for her in the test room. The voice then says that the facility is designed for experimentation and reconditioning. Eileen mentions that she wants to go back, and the voice asks if she wants to go through the tests again. Eileen then says that if she can't save Eve, she wants to at least go back to continue believing that she can.
You wish to retest?
Yes.
Following this, the voice grants her request and tells her to prepare for a reset. After she says she's ready, Eileen sees herself with Eve again, and she looks happy as they sing together. She eventually falls asleep on the beach, but when she wakes up, she returns to the strange room. Interestingly, she doesn't remember anything, and as she asks if there's anyone around, the voice tells her to move the pencil on the table. After finding herself inside a room where she's being experimented on, Eileen starts getting flashbacks, which help her remember her past. Even though she doesn't like the idea of being a test subject, she remains cooperative because she's under the impression that her captors have her daughter. After several tests, she eventually gets tired and uses her powers to kill the soldiers sent to take her down. Before she leaves the building, though, she realizes that she had actually killed her husband and daughter a while ago, and she has been repeating the experiment so she can remain close to them.